My brother's autism destroyed me. I guess for this to make sense, I have to start from the beginning. 24 years ago, my twin brother and I were born. We are fraternal twins. I'm a girl and he's a boy. Everything seemed fine when we were born, at least based off of what I've been told. We were about a month premature, but that's pretty normal for twins. My brother had more issues than I did, but ultimately we were discharged from the hospital as healthy babies. Things just went on from there. My mom had pretty severe postpartum depression, according to her and my dad. My dad told me that she didn't care for us at all because of the depression and that he did everything. I don't hold that against her. I deal with pretty significant depression myself and know what it's like. Anyway, I guess the depression subsided and she got pregnant with my younger brother. But when my brother and I were 2, something happened that changed everything. My twin was diagnosed with severe autism. Now, when I say Server's autism, I mean severe. Unable to care for himself in any way, can't read, barely able to communicate, very behavioral. The worst was the constant screaming. When I say constantly, I mean constantly. I can still hear it when I think about it. A high-pitched, never-ending scream. I know it's not his fault, and I don't blame him, so please don't come at me. Before I proceed any further, I want to get something out of the way. I love my twin brother more than anything. I would do anything for him. I know that he can't help his autism, but just because I love him doesn't mean I can't also recognize that his autism had a profound effect on me. People don't realize how hard it is for the families of those with disabilities. They don't realize how hard it is to see a loved one suffer like that. They don't understand the agonizing guilt that comes along with it. They don't understand how traumatizing it is to endure the constant screaming, the violent behaviors. To witness your parents feel so helpless and appear so sad and distraught all of the time. To see your brother pee and poop and throw up all over himself, scream, run around both in private and in public, and to have strangers yell at you and tell your parents that they are horrible parents for not being able to control their child, and then to see their parents cry because they're trying their best. To have your twin brother pinch, tackle you, and pull your hair and not understand why. To see your twin brother hurt himself and hurt others. To be deprived of attention at vital stages of development because your brother's needs are so much more than yours. To have no one explain to you what is going on, so you end up blaming yourself because he's your twin brother. To feel like you need to be perfect and can't have needs of your own because your parents are so overwhelmed by your brother that you don't want to cause any additional burdens for them. To see your mom become a shell of the person that she used to be because she blames herself for your twin's autism and will never get over that. To see your dad become angry and turn to marijuana as a way to cope. All that being said, I know it's not my brother's fault, and I know the biggest victim of all of this is him. It breaks my heart that he has to deal with all that he has to deal with. I wish that I could take it all away from him, but I've had to accept that I really have no control over anything. Bad things just happen. At least that's what I tell myself, so I don't blame myself. Anyways, back to the story. My mom found out that my twin had autism while pregnant with my younger brother. A few months later, my younger brother was born. Again, everything seemed fine, until my younger brother didn't talk until he was 4. I think he was diagnosed with autism, but my parents hid it from me. I think because they were in denial about it. But then he started talking at 4. He got all the services, speech, OT, all those things. So did my twin brother. I didn't get a lot of attention because my brother's needs were so great. I felt unimportant and like I didn't matter. When I did have a need, it wasn't really focused on. I developed severe anxiety from a young age. I think it was a mix of genetics and the stressful environment that I grew up in. Severe to the point where teachers noticed. But I didn't get any help for it for a long time. Fast forward to the summer before 6th grade. My twin's behaviors became worse. The screaming was still constant. He would break things, and he had been to around 5 different schools at that point. He wouldn't sleep unless he was medicated. He would take an antipsychotic medication at night to help him sleep. It worked, but had side effects, like an insatiable appetite and weight gain. We had to lock the kitchen cabinets. My brother would also try to run away all the time, and sometimes was successful. One time my dad went out, and my mom was left with all three of us. She was never the one to care for my twin hands-on. That was mainly my dad and me too sometimes. My brother ran away, and we couldn't find him anywhere. My mom had to call the police. They found my brother walking barefoot in the middle of the road. My mom was hysterical and yelling, and she barricaded the door with as much furniture as she could find. We ended up getting multiple locks on all of our doors. One time he ran away while I was watching him. I turned my back for 1 second and he was gone. We found him on his three-wheeler in the middle of the road again. I could never have friends over because of my brother's behavior. It was hard to focus on my homework or anything for that matter because of the constant screaming. Anyway, the summer before 6th grade is when things started to get really hard. The anxiety morphed into something way worse. I had repetitive thoughts that bad things would happen, and I had to do repetitive actions, or else I thought the bad things would come true. I would later realize that this was OCD, but in the meantime I felt crazy and out of control. My parents would get angry at me when I would engage in the repetitive behaviors, or ask for constant reassurance. I understand it was annoying, and they didn't want to have another kid with problems, but I couldn't help it. I was told that it was for attention. Honestly, maybe it was a little bit, because I was so deprived of it, but them telling me that only hurt more. I didn't understand why my brother's problems got so much care and attention, but mine were just met with anger. Anyway, the OCD grew worse. I would have meltdowns because my thoughts were so horrible. My dad would get so angry. He would chase me up to my room and tackle me. He cut the head off of my favorite doll and cut up one of my favorite shirts. I got kicked in the tailbone once and couldn't sit properly for like a week. He didn't mean to kick me in the tailbone, only the squishy part. To be fair, I was impossible. Him doing what he did was the only thing to get me to stop, but it hurt. I felt so helpless, and like they didn't understand. Later that summer, my parents finally took me to a psychiatrist. I got diagnosed with OCD and put on SSRIs, and things got better for a short while. But middle school was rough. I lost all my friends because I was acting out. Everyone thought I was weird, and I was. The OCD was more controlled, but still there. 8th grade came, and I think that's when the depression started to develop. That was the first time that I cut myself. Honestly, I did do it for attention. I desperately craved it because I was so deprived of it. I desperately wanted someone to care about me. The only way I knew how to go about that was to show people that I was struggling. I saw my brothers get attention for their struggles, and I thought that that was the only way to get people to care about me. I craved it from teachers. I tried to show them my arm, but make it look like TI was an accident. Like I kept my sleeve rolled up when they were near me, but they never noticed. High school came, and that's when things got really bad. My twin brother ended up having to go to a residential school because his behaviors became too hard to handle at home. This killed me. I thought it was my fault because we were twins. I thought I was the reason we were premature, and maybe I caused something at birth. I had this survivor's guilt of sorts, like why him and not me? I became very depressed. My mom also became very depressed. I have memories of her in bed next to a bottle of benzos. Everyone fell apart. For years, our whole family revolved around my twin, and now he was no longer at home. I craved attention from teachers even more. I felt like a bad person for this, but I couldn't help it. I tried to make myself look upset in front of them on purpose because I wanted them to ask if I was okay. Meanwhile, my parents called me an attention seeker when I would express my struggles. I became convinced that I was a bad person for being an attention seeker, but I also couldn't help being one. My OCD harped on this, and I would obsess about this constantly. Getting attention was almost like a compulsion, but then when I would do things to get attention, I would feel incredibly guilty about it, and I absolutely hated and despised myself for this. I started self-harming a lot more, and I also started restricting my eating. I lost a lot of weight. My psychiatrist became worried about me. My parents told me I was an attention seeker, and my mom made fun of me for my boobs getting smaller. My obsessions about needing attention, but then also hating myself for it, became stronger. My OCD became really bad again. I wanted to die. I couldn't take it anymore. But I got good grades, I played varsity soccer and somehow functioned. I had to. I had to be the one that would be normal. I got into an accelerated doctorate of physical therapy program at a prestigious school because my grades were good. I told myself I would be a physical therapist and help people with autism. I went to college, against the advice of my therapist and psychiatrist, because my parents said there was no other option. I had a mental breakdown. My OCD became debilitating. I could barely even move without extreme difficulty because the compulsions were so intense. The obsessions were awful and torturous. My grades were terrible. I failed out of the accelerated program because I couldn't maintain the necessary GPA to stay in the program. I stayed in the university but under a health sciences major instead. I self-harmed a lot. I wanted to die and was very close to actually trying to do so. I had no friends. I had a guy who would sexually harass me and a boyfriend who I didn't even love. My parents wouldn't let me leave school. My psychiatrist I was seeing there convinced them to let me go to a residential treatment place for OCD during the summer. I couldn't stay the full length because it would interfere with school starting back up in the fall. But it was helpful for the time being. My compulsions were reduced a lot. The root cause of my obsessions weren't traced though. I couldn't tell anyone what it was. That I was so obsessed with needing attention. I was convinced that they would think that I was a bad person. I was in denial about it because I couldn't face it. So I left the place and went back to school hoping to have a better semester. But I had a breakdown within a few weeks of being there. I became extremely depressed and my parents forced my parents to take me home. They treated me like a failure. They were embarrassed to bring me places because they were embarrassed that I wasn't in college like everybody else my age. It was torture being inside my brain. I ended up having to go to the mental hospital. I was tying stuff around my neck and screaming because the thoughts in my brain were torture. I didn't want to be alive anymore. The OCD place accepted me back, and luckily insurance covered it. But it didn't help this time. I was too far gone. I ended up in another mental hospital because I was going to take my own life. I was done. I saw no point. I thought I brought everyone pain. I was 19 years old, and I did some really intense treatments that I am embarrassed to admit to. I would act out, try to hurt myself on the unit. One day I was hysterically crying. A nurse came to talk to me. I told her I couldn't take it and that I wanted to die. She listened to me. Nobody ever listened to me before. She told me that she had similar struggles to me and that she was able to get better and that I could too. This was the turning point for me. For the first time in my life, I believed that I could get better. The one day I met with the social worker there. She was questioning me about my destructive behaviors. I don't know what allowed me to do it, but I admitted to her that I think I did these behaviors because I didn't get a lot of attention growing up because of my twin brother. I had never told anyone that before. I thought she would think that I was a bad person, but instead she told me that that made a lot of sense. I hadn't yet uncovered how crummy my family situation was yet, and I hadn't even fully admitted to myself that I was an attention seeker, but this was a huge step for me. I ended up deciding that I wanted to be a nurse and help other people like the nurse that talked to me helped me. This was enough to give me a reason for wanting to live. That became my purpose until I could find one for myself. I was discharged from the hospital a little bit later. Things were hard at first. I was still extremely depressed. I still had really bad obsessive thoughts and thought of myself as a bad person. But I started seeing a really helpful therapist and enrolled in nursing school, and things started to go in a positive direction. I started to uncover a lot of trauma that I had been through. Not only the stuff from my twin brother, like the screaming and the behaviors, but also my family situation, my mom's depression, the emotional abuse and neglect, the physical abuse that there was a little bit of. I realized that my OCD probably arose as a way to try to find some sense of control over a situation that felt so out of control. I graduated nursing school and got my first job as a nurse in September of 2023. I am having a hard time right now, but it does help to think of how far I've come. I still have really bad anxiety and obsessive thoughts. I still have pretty significant attention. The trauma that I experienced still impacts a whole lot of aspects of my everyday life. The way I interact with people. It's hard for me to have friendships. I don't have any friends right now. I still feel this survivor's guilt about my twin. Why him and not me? I am starting to realize it's not my fault, though. Sometimes I feel like a failure. I'm 24 years old. I only have an associate's degree. I am going to work toward obtaining my bachelor's in July. I still live at home. I'm trying to save up. I have all these mental problems. I've gained a lot of weight because of the medications that I take. I still give into a lot of attention-seeking urges, although not as much. I feel less bad about it, though, because at least I know I developed those urges for a reason. Work is really hard. I work on a med-surg floor, and it's really difficult. I am known as the anxious one by the people I work with. I've never really had a fulfilling romantic relationship. My room is a mess. Work causes me so much anxiety that I sometimes dread going in. I plan on switching to psychiatric nursing after I reach the 1-year mark. I still have 4 months to go. I hope that will be easier for me. I feel like a failure. I know I have overcome a lot, but I still have a long way to go. Sometimes I feel like I will never get over what I've been through. Nobody understands, and sometimes I just feel disconnected by people. Sometimes I wonder how my life would have turned out if my brother never had autism. Would it be different? I feel bad thinking that. I am happy that I ended up being a nurse now and that I can help other people. I don't know if that would have happened if it weren't for what I've been through. Anyways, that's my story. I left some things out because it's impossible to say everything. I hope you don't think I'm a bad person. I love my brother more than anything.